Revealed, the sinister legacy of the Halberts. Hidden secrets of the haunted never-buried dead. Claire Halbert stepped out of her car, and the air thickened with an unnatural heaviness. Pine Ridge loomed before her, a shadow of its former self. Once vibrant, the streets now felt like a graveyard of lost dreams, whispers clawing at her ears. As she approached her childhood home, the peeling paint and sagging porch glared back at her, a family legacy laid bare in decay. Memories of laughter and playful summers twisted into something darker. The garden, once alive with colors, had become a tangled nightmare, as if nature itself rebelled against whatever secret stirred beneath its roots. The suffocating silence clung to her, almost palpable. Claire unloaded moving boxes, her heart racing. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a taunt, a reminder that the walls had absorbed horrors she was only beginning to fathom. With each box overturned, she could feel a presence lurking just beyond her vision, a shadow slipping away whenever she turned. Who could she trust here? The neighbors watched her with eyes full of suspicion, their faces hollowed by despair, their whispers thick with unspoken accusations. Pine Ridge felt like a ticking time bomb, a place where fear smothered hope, but it was the stories she'd heard as a child that threatened to pull her under. Claire shook her head, trying to dispel those old tales of the restless dead whispering secrets across the wind. She had long dismissed them, yet those whispers had begun to creep into her reality. Last night, flickering lights danced across her bedroom, shadows sliding like quicksilver around her, dread pooling in her stomach. The old cemetery in her backyard, overgrown with weeds and tangled vines, called to her like a siren's song. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a mix of terror and curiosity, Claire pushed open the rickety gate to the graveyard, shadows licking at her ankles. As she stepped onto the overgrown paths, a paralyzing chill wrapped around her. The air grew thick, suffocating, and with each step, she could hear the muffled whispers, words she couldn't quite understand but felt were meant for her. A low rumble echoed from deep within the earth, and shadows shifted, coiling around her. Was it just her imagination? Or was this place truly haunted by her family's dark past? The deeper Claire delved, the more questions gnawed at her resolve. She stumbled upon a grave marked only by a crumbling stone, her heart throbbing fiercely. It felt wrong, a warning from the past coming alive. As she read the faded inscription, ice coursed through her blood. A name she recognized, a legacy she never wanted. Panic gripped her as the realization set in. The night grew darker as dread clawed at her, an insatiable hunger for the truth pulling her closer to a horrifying reality. Who could she trust in Pine Ridge when her darkest fears thrummed in the silence, waiting for their moment to break free? The chilling winds howled as if in answer, an echo of a family history that refused to stay buried. Claire's breath hitched in her throat as she stumbled backward, her eyes fixed on the grave. The name carved into the stone burned into her mind, an unyielding reminder of the family ties she wished to escape. Whatever was buried here was more than just bones, it was a festering legacy, and she felt the bitter taste of its poison in her mouth. The ground trembled slightly, a seismic shift that made her heart race faster. She glanced around, desperate for a sign that she wasn't truly alone. The whispering intensified, a guttural cacophony swirling around her, echoing off the forgotten stones like a dark prayer. Get out, the voices seemed to chant, entwining with the rustle of leaves and tightening around her like a noose. Gritting her teeth, Claire turned back towards the house, needing to escape this oppressive weight. But the moment she moved, a cold gust swept through, stronger than before, pushing her back towards the grave. She stumbled, falling to her knees, hands digging into the earth as if it beckoned for her touch. The soil pulsed under her fingers, alive with something sinister and forbidden, and then, her gaze drifted back to the grave. Something caught her eye, a shimmer just beneath the dirt. She could hardly breathe, pulse pounding in her ears like a war drum. Was it a relic? A hidden secret meant only for her? Or a trap laid by the very spirits that haunted this place? Claire, the voice crackled through her mind, distinct and clear, yet laced with dissonance. It was her name, yet spoken with a chilling familiarity. It felt like the embodiment of her fears, as if the grave itself was calling her urgently. She rubbed her eyes, trying to shake off the dizziness that threatened to envelop her. The familiar echoes of childhood laughter morphed into cries of despair, drowning her thoughts. Sweat trickled down her back as she wrestled with the decision. She was tethered to this house, to these memories, but did she dare disturb the resting place of her ancestors? What if she unearthed more than just history? What if she brought out the very thing that had been locked away for years? Suddenly, the grave shifted, a shudder that reverberated through her. Claire! The voice grew louder, more insistent, with a deep breath, fueled by a mix of dread and need for the truth, she began to scrape away the earth. Each handful of dirt seemed to weigh a ton, but she pressed on, heart pounding, thoughts racing. What lay beneath? What was trying to escape? The soil finally revealed a dull object glimmering in the fading light. Her hand trembled as she wrapped her fingers around it, pulling it free. It felt heavier than she expected. The moment she lifted it, a sudden chill swept through the air, a wave of despair crashing over her like an ocean tide. Claire froze as visions flickered before her eyes, faces twisted in agony, lost in a void of torment. A blood-curdling scream ripped through her mind, spiraling into the silence that followed. Her heart dropped. What had she done? The weight of the shadows pressed harder, the air thick with malevolence. The whispers shifted from warnings to laughter, chilling and sinister. Claire's grip faltered, terror flooding her veins. And just like that, far behind her, the door to the house creaked open again, shadows spilling out, eager for the night. There would be no turning back now. What hidden horrors awaited her next? Could she survive the truth, or would she become another lost name in the legacy of the Halberts? Claire felt the weight of the object in her hand, cold and heavy like a judgment passed down through generations. She stumbled back, adrenaline pumping, heart drumming a frantic tempo in her ears. The shadows moved closer, stretching like fingers eager to embrace her in their embrace of darkness. Her breath quickened as the laughter morphed into a guttural chant, rising and falling in a maddening rhythm. Memories flickered, her mother's eyes glazed over with sorrow, her father's whispers filled with dread. They warned her of the Halberts' past, but never this. Never this bone-chilling horror waiting just beneath the surface. Holding the object before her felt like holding a heart still beating, a lifeline to something long dead yet terrifyingly alive. Suddenly, that chilling voice broke through the chaos again, resonating deep within her core. Claire, you must know. She shook her head, hands trembling as she tried to shake off the sensation of being pulled under a tidal wave of anguish. Before she could collect herself, the earth around the grave shivered once more. A low rumble echoed underfoot, as if warning her to put it back, to leave it be, but she couldn't. Not now. Whatever hibernated here had clawed its way into her heart, igniting a morbid curiosity that threatened to consume her. She forced herself to face the object once more, revealing a worn locket. Its surface was engraved with intricate patterns that seemed to pulsate under her touch, telling stories of unspoken history. As she snapped it open, a knotted piece of cloth tumbled out, stained and frayed. A flicker of memory skated through her mind, faint and haunting. Laughter echoed in her ears, twisting into screams. Images of a family gathering morphed into nightmarish scenes of betrayal during a feast turned deadly. A sudden wind knocked her backward as the grave's cold breath washed over her, and the air thickened, a noxious presence swirling around her. You should not have awakened us. Roared the shadows, the whispers now united in furious condemnation. She stumbled, eyes wide, heart racing. The ground trembled again, not just under her feet, but in the pit of her stomach, as if the earth itself was warning her no, begging her to turn back. The history of the Halberts was not just tragic, it thrummed with sinister energy, alive with spirits caught between worlds. Why, Claire? Why did you have to disturb our slumber? The voice was a blend of many, overlapping and coiling around her like a serpent, suffocating her reason. She felt their pain, their rage, she inhaled their bitterness, and a shudder coursed through her, sweat dripped down her temple, pooling at her collar as she darted her eyes around, desperate for escape. The shadows from the house loomed larger now, a distorted figure beckoning her closer. Claire hesitated. The urge to flee wrestled with the nagging need for answers. As she rose to her feet, something deep within her screamed to leave to reclaim her safety. But as the shadows writhed and danced at the edges of her vision, she understood. There was nothing safe left to return to. With a tear slipping down her cheek, she turned back toward the grave. The locket burned hot in her palm. And just as she prepared to shield herself against the encroaching void, something flew from the grave, a figure forming from the shadowed earth, reaching for her, eyes hollow, mouth twisted into a scream without sound. Everything goes back to the beginning, Claire intoned, voice wrapped in dread. What had she unsealed? What was about to rise from the depths of her family's buried despair? The legacy of the Halberts was far from over. In fact, she had only just begun to unearth the truth that could shatter her reality. What awaited her in that darkness? Would she become the harbinger of another generation's sins? The figure lunged from the grave, its shape becoming clearer, a woman, or what once was a woman, wrapped in tattered remnants of a dress long forgotten, her skin gray like the ash of burned memories. Claire gasped, rooted to the spot as icy dread seeped into her bones. The air crackled with tension, swirling shadows crawling towards her, eager to consume. Claire, the spectre rasped, voice shuddering like brittle leaves in an autumn storm. You've opened the door. The chaos enveloped her, the whispers rising again, a cacophony of despair. Stories spilled forth, fragmented and dark. Betrayals, lost loves, blood ties that bind even beyond death. Each word sliced through Claire's mind, bleeding her confidence into the ground with every syllable. Panic danced in her chest, and she backed away slowly, unsure of which way was safe. Was there even a way back? The locket felt heavier, like a weight of sorrow she could no longer hold. You must listen. The figure shrieked, the shadows swirling into a tempest around Claire. They howled of forgotten grievances, accusing her for awakening them. Whatever was left of this woman, it was clear, had been tied to the Halberts in ways Claire was only beginning to grasp. Memories fought for possession of her thoughts, the betrayal at the family gathering, the looks exchanged between her parents that had always gone unspoken. Please! Claire shouted, as raw desperation clawed up her throat. What do you want from me? It's not what I want. The apparition cried, her voice a fragile whisper on the edge of madness. You must uncover the truth. The truth that lies buried. The shadows raised an arm, but Claire couldn't hear them, she couldn't hear anything but her heartbeat pounding in her ears. The darkness pressed tighter, and as it wrapped around her, it caressed her skin with icy fingers. She could almost feel the weight of 1,000 sorrowful eyes upon her, each drawing strength from her fear. Dropping the locket, she stumbled backward. It hit the ground and clanked against the stones, causing the shadows to freeze, as if enraptured by the sound. For a fleeting moment, silence settled like a blanket over the scene. What was that? She breathed, startled by the sudden stillness as the spectre edged closer. It must be returned. The words shot out like arrows. Only then can the history refusing to die be put to rest. Without thinking, Claire turned to flee, her instincts kicking in harder than all rational thought. The figures around her lunged, claws of shadow reaching for the exposed warmth of her flesh. As she ran, the night swallowed her screams, and the ground beneath her was suffocating, each stone a reminder of the history she had unearthed unwittingly. Don't run from the past, Claire. The voice hissed behind her. You can't hide. It calls to you. Embrace it, embrace us. Stumbling through the brush, her breath hitched and a surge of panic clawed at her throat, but still she pushed forward. If she could make it to the house, maybe there would be safety. Or at least answers. Bursting through the door, she slammed it shut, barricading herself against the terror outside, but Claire's heart sank. The walls of her family home felt alive, reverberating with the anger of those interred outside. Murmurs seeped through to her, a suffocating reminder that she could not simply escape. Glimmers of light flickered around her, illuminating remnants of unearthed family secrets. In the corner of the room, an old mirror caught her eye, shards scattered across the floor like memories broken. "What are you hiding?" she murmured, creeping toward it. Just as she reached out a trembling hand to touch the cracked surface, the room darkened again, and the chilling whispers grew louder. Claire knew she had awakened something more than just the dead. The shadows were alive with sins from the past, and somehow, they were desperate for her to confront them. Who will suffer for the truth? She pondered, unerringly aware that the answer could change everything. Would she join their torment, or rise above it? As the mirrors' reflection shimmered, echoing a distant memory, Claire sensed the truth was closer than she thought. But what would it cost her to uncover it? The room swelled with anticipation, and a revelation hovered in the darkness like a predator ready to strike. The mirror's surface rippled as if a hidden current flowed beneath it. Claire leaned in closer, her breath hitching as she caught a glimpse of something, an echo of a face, twisted in anguish. The room pulsed around her, shadows elongating and contracting as if the very air breathed in sorrow. "Do not look away." A voice, now harsh and commanding, sliced through her thoughts. The specter had somehow followed her inside. "You need to see what lies beyond." Her heart pounded, each beat louder than the last. What do you want from me?" she whispered, the words barely escaping the grip of terror. "It's not about me, it's about you." The spectral figure advanced, the ashes of a life unlived swirling at her feet. "You are the key to their bondage. You must unlock the chains that bind us." As Claire's hand hovered inches from the mirror, a haze filled her vision. Fleeting snapshots of lives long extinguished flickered, a child's laughter, a sobbing mother, a frantic plea for help that went unanswered. With each vision, despair tightened around Claire's throat, suffocating in thick. "No!" she cried, pulling her hand back. The feelings were too raw, too real. She wanted to turn away, to shrink back from the horror unraveling before her. But something twinged in her heart, a flicker of empathy, a desperate need to understand the roots of such pain. "Remember," the ghost hissed, her eyes promising secrets yet unbroken. "Their pain is your blood. Buried truths must be unearthed, even if it costs you everything." The room trembled as if answering the woman's call. Claire felt the shadows hiss, furious for her hesitation. "You're wrong," she shouted, trying to assert control. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to be burdened with your ghostly chains." As if in response to her defiance, a cacophony of voices erupted, spiraling around the room. Each carried accusations, grievances, and frayed edges of old relationships. Memories of betrayal clawed at her skin, leaving bitter prints of doubt. "Your lineage calls for reckoning." The spectre screeched, the authority of her voice sharp enough to scrape against Claire's sanity. "The truth binds you as it bound the others. You cannot escape your heritage." "Shut up!" Claire screamed. She stumbled back against a wall, the coolness offering slight comfort, yet darkness loomed. In a flash, the mirror exploded with images: her father's face twisted in fury, her mother weeping as she opened a letter stained with ink and tears. Claire felt her heart race, revelations chasing her thoughts down a spiraling path. "Why? Why are you showing me this?" The air crackled around her, voices intertwining. "Because the grave will not remain silent," the ghost proclaimed. "To rise again, the bond must be severed. You must jeopardize your safety for our freedom. Only then can we be unbound." With a jolt that coursed through her entire body, a deep-seated desire ignited within her. A need to know, to piece together these fragments of despair. Yet with it came fear, creeping like mist around her ankles. Suddenly, all went still. Darkness loomed once more, swallowing everything until all there was left was a dark void, and Claire was left alone in it. A fleeting memory swam into focus. The locket. Had she dropped it? Returned to the gravesite, Claire. The whispers enveloped her, but they were faint, more like a tangled web than a clear command. Face the truth, reclaim your past. The floor beneath her shook violently, and Claire steadied herself, ready to bolt. She needed answers, not just for herself, but for the souls entwined with her fate. As she turned, stepping back, her heart raced fearfully at the thought that she would have to confront the very thing she feared most, the truth buried under years of silence. The air shifted, a crack in the wall of certainty. Maybe the shadows were right. But would she pay the price that came with the truth? With each step toward the door, every echo of despair reminded her that answers wouldn't come without sacrifice. No more running. It's time to uncover what the darkness had painted over a history ripped at the seams, begging to be stitched back together. She opened the door, trembling at the echo of the night outside. What awaited her just beneath the surface of the earth was no simple answer. It was a storm brewing. Will you confront it? The specter whispered now, her voice ghostly and omnipresent. Or shall we all remain in the dark forever? With a deep breath, Claire stepped forward, ready to face the sinister legacy of the Halberts. But what awaited her beneath the earth? And at what cost would the truth finally emerge? The gravel crunched beneath Claire's feet as she stepped outside, the night air heavy with an electric tension. Shadows twisted and curled among the trees, each breath she took felt charged with foreboding. The whispers from the specter echoed in her mind, wrapping around her thoughts like tendrils of smoke. Return to the gravesite. It was just a short walk through the dense woods that loomed beyond the edge of her yard. Each step felt like trudging through a thick fog, the weight of expectation pressing down on her chest. What would she find at her family's gravesite? Deeper into the forest she went, moonlight barely filtering down through the canopy, a few peeking rays casting ghostly figures that sent shudders through her. Heart racing, she remembered the locket again. She had found it tucked away in one of the old photo albums her mother kept. Its engraved surface shimmered with memories, but it was more than that. It held the key to something darker, a secret her lineage had buried. A rustle in the underbrush made her freeze. Claire turned, every muscle taut, waiting for a glimpse of whatever had disturbed the silence. Nothing, just the howling wind mocking her fear, whispering secrets she was not yet ready to uncover. But she pressed on, deeper into the moonless night, driven by a strange compulsion to confront the abyss of her family's history. The gravesite was just ahead, an ancient stone marker standing solitary against the night sky. Vines snaked around its base, whispers of fury rising from the ground. When she reached the gravestone, Claire's breath caught in her throat. The name Halbert was carved deep into the stone, accompanied by dates that seemed to taunt her with silence. So many lives lost, each one absorbed by time yet not forgotten by those who remained. As she knelt to clear the underbrush, a cold wind swept past her, sending shivers rippling down her spine. She was not alone. Claire's soft, trembling voice drifted through the air, barely above a whisper but undeniably present. Instantly, fear wrapped around her heart. "Who is there?" she stammered, scanning the darkness. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one more sinister than the last. "It is us." The voices began to rise, a chorus of ghostly murmurs creeping into her ears. The wails of sorrow blended with longing, relentless in their plea. "You must listen." Desperation clawed at her throat, memories flashing in bursts, fragments of a past laden with sorrow. She clutched her fists, knuckles white against the roots of the grave, trembling with helplessness. "No. I don't want to hear you," Claire yelled, startling herself at the ferocity of her own voice. "You've haunted me long enough. There is no escape, Claire." The voices threatened, a chilling echo wrapping around her. "You are tied to us by blood, by sin. We linger until the truth is uncovered." Hot tears raced down her cheeks. She couldn't bear the weight of their sorrow. It was inescapable. "What do you want me to do?" "Dig." The single word crackled through the chilly night air, sharp as the bite of death. The sudden clarity rattled her. "Dig? Here. Now. With shaking hands, Claire grasped the cold earth, nails digging into the soil as the dead weight of dread descended. She felt the energy shift around her, like a tightrope stretched taut against the night. Shadows danced at the edge of her vision, pulsating with an eerie anticipation. As she clawed deeper, the ground felt unsettlingly alive, the soil turning soft beneath her fingers. A glimmer caught her eye, a glint of gold. Just as her heart jumped with hope, the voices screeched, their tone twisting into a frenzy of panic. "Claire, stop! You don't know what you're awakening." "What do you mean?" She gasped, breathless as she unearthed the locket. But the moment her fingers brushed against the metal, a bone-chilling wail erupted into the night, and she suddenly felt the air around her thicken, crackling with malevolence. The memories, the pain, it all surged like a tidal wave, overwhelming her sense of self. Claire knew in that instant, the horror she unearthed would come at a terrible price. Trembling, she held the locket tighter as darkness closed in, carving a path of despair around her. "What have I done?" she whispered, the gravity of her actions crashing down like the weight of 1,000 stones. The forest shook, branches twisting in protest, and for a brief moment, she saw them shadows of her ancestors, rising viciously from the graves. "You have awakened us, Claire, and now you must face us." With panic clawing at her throat, she realized the spectre's warning had come to life. The truth wasn't merely waiting, it was awake, hungry for resolution. What had she awakened? And would she survive the confrontation that lay ahead? Claire staggered back as the shadows surged forth, their voices rising in a cacophony of bitterness and despair. Each whisper seemed to lash at her skin, leaving a chill that sank deep into her bones. She clutched the locket tightly in her palm, its cold surface sending a jolt of fear through her. It felt like the heart of the storm, thrumming with a power she had barely touched. "You have awakened us, Claire," they repeated, their voices echoing in the blackness, twisting like smoke, swirling around her. She could feel their pain, their anger and oppression so heavy it made her limbs feel like lead. "What do you want?" she cried out, desperation flooding her voice. "What do you need from me?" The ground beneath her began to tremble, subtle at first but growing stronger with each passing heartbeat. The trees surrounding her, ancient and gnarled, creaked ominously. Even the wind seemed to be drawn into their haunting chorus, a sinister harmony that filled her with dread. "You must know the truth," one voice shrieked. "You must remember your roots, Claire. The sins of the past cannot remain buried. They demand release." A memory flickered through her mind, a fleeting image of her grandmother, the same locket dangling from her frail neck, eyes wide with a tale unspoken. Claire could almost taste the bitter remnants of family secrets, the weight of blood ties strangling her thoughts. "Show me!" Claire shouted into the night, a sudden fire igniting in her chest, pushing back against their ghastly communion. "I want to know what they did." As if her words fueled their rage, the shadows surged forward, twisting into horrific visages that danced just beyond her sight. Faces of the dead, lost and mournful, breaking free from the chains of silence. She squeezed her eyes shut, drowning in terror, but the darkness enveloped her, pulling her deeper into their despair. "Blood demands blood." The chorus erupted, and in the next instant, icy fingers gripped Claire's wrist with a vice-like intensity, pulling her towards the gravestone. She stumbled, heart racing and legs weak. With every step closer, the shadows became vivid, their agonized expressions clear under the flickering moonlight. These weren't just apparitions, they were condemning spirits wearing the faces of her kin. The oldest among them, a frail figure with hollow eyes, stepped forward. You carry our legacy, yet turn from it. You have the power to end our torment, but only if you dare unearth the truth." "What truth?" Claire asked, voice trembling, uncertainty gripping her. "What do I have to do?" The wind howled as the shadows shifted and swirled around her, growing chaotic. "Feed the soil that holds our burdens," they cried, a sinister demand that sent ice through her veins. Fear and anger surged within her. She was a Halbert, intertwined with this dark history. But what will it cost me? Everything. They shrieked in unison, as if delighted by the prospect of her sacrifice. A cold realization settled in. She had come seeking answers, but the depth of her family's transgressions was something monstrous, festering just beneath the surface. She could almost hear her heartbeat echo in the earth beneath her, a rhythm of dread mixed with anticipation. Without thinking, Claire thrust her free hand into the soil around the grave. Fingertips scraping the cold ground, heart hammering wildly, she uncovered a handful of something slimy and dark, matted hair entwined with soil and bone fragments. The very essence of her bloodline, a burial long concealed. At that moment, the shadows howled triumphantly. You've awakened the curse. Now you must choose, Claire. Will you embrace the darkness and set us free, or will you let our suffering consume you all? The choice lay heavy on her heart, like a weight that threatened to crush her. She glanced at the locket in her grip, a symbol of her lineage, and knew that the answer might not just reveal her family's horrors but also shatter her very soul. This was the crossroads beneath the weight of vengeance and the secret legacy to which she belonged. Her fate hung in the balance. With trembling fingers, she hesitated, the truth lying just underneath. Could she face whatever darkness was unleashed? Just as the shadows pressed closer, ready to engulf her, Claire felt the world tilt violently around her, her decision poised on the razor's edge. Will you sacrifice everything to unlock the truth? The question echoed in the silence, challenging her resolve. And in that moment, the night held its breath, waiting. Claire's heart raced as the shadows loomed, their breath hot against her skin, each whisper reaching deeper into her thoughts. The remnants of the earth beneath her nails were a grotesque reminder of the monsters lurking within her lineage. A part of her screamed to dig deeper, to force out the knowledge that could grant them release, but another part warned her of the danger that lay in the truth. The shadows pulsed around her, urging her onward. Embrace your destiny. They chanted, their hollow eyes fixated on her, bleak and hungry. You must give us what we crave. The air thickened, stifling her breaths, wrapping around her throat like a noose. The locket in her palm felt heavier, as if the very weight of her lineage was pressing down on her chest. What had her ancestors done? What unspeakable horrors fed this curse? The questions twisted in her mind, sharp and relentless. Choose. The old spectre rasped, spittle falling from its dry lips. What are you willing to sacrifice? The ground trembled again as if echoing the rising tide of desperation in Claire's chest. She looked back at the grave, the bone fragments and matted hair catching the moon's light. They whispered persistently, you know your heart will not rest until you know. Without thinking, she pressed her fingers deeper into the earth, heart pounding, pulse echoing with dread. It felt as if she was peeling back layers of her family's past with each handful of dirt. The shadows thrashed and howled, their voices rose into a din, urging her on. Feed us your fear, let it seep into the ground. Only then will the truth emerge. What truth? She felt suspended in a dark sea of uncertainty. The night pressed in on her, but rage bubbled within. Claire wanted to scream. Instead, she steadied her breath and grasped the locket tightly, feeling the warmth on her skin, the only glimmer of life in this oppressive void. What if I refuse? She whispered, the question hanging in the air like dense fog. Refusal leads to torment. The shadows shrieked, their voices now sharp, slicing through her resolve. You will see your kin perish all over again. Their screams will rise from the ground you dare not touch. A vision flickered in her mind, a figure in a tattered dress, pleading eyes filled with remorse. It was her grandmother, her voice a haunting echo. You must remember, she intoned, the roots run deeper than you think. It all rushed in like a tidal wave, the reason for her family's shame and the darkness they had buried. The locket felt electrified, a portal to the suffering that had resonated through generations. Could Claire really hold their pain in her hands? With a surge of defiance, Claire yanked the locket open, revealing a small image inside. The face was familiar but contorted in anguish. The whispers turned to screams of terror, a cacophony that made her want to clutch her temples and drown them out. Face it. Face your legacy. She stared into the locket, the shadows swirling ever closer, their cold tendrils brushing her skin. The images darkened, and in an instant, Claire was lost in the whirlwind of memories, her family's history of violence, betrayal, and bloodlust colliding with her own fleeting moments of joy. "What have you done?" she shouted, rage boiling over. "Release me." In that moment, something cracked, a deep fissure beneath her feet. The shadows howled, a fury unleashed. Claire staggered back as the ground quaked, the grave splitting open, revealing a maw of darkness filled with the echoes of the buried, crying out for vengeance. "Take your place among the cursed, or be consumed." The shadows screamed, their faces grotesquely contorted with rage, time suspended as choice and consequence coiled tightly around her heart, a knot of dread and defiance. Could she embrace a legacy wrapped in such darkness? As the ground split wider, tendrils of shadow lunged toward her. Claire steeled herself, knowing that the moment to act was slipping away. She had two paths beckoning before her, one steeped in blood and vengeance, the other in unspeakable horrors. Would she stand her ground against the coming storm, or be swept away into the abyss? Just as the shadows surged to claim her, a sudden light broke through the darkness, blinding and brilliant. "Who dares disturb our slumber?" A voice thundered from the depths, demanding an answer. The shadows receded, howling in fury, leaving Claire trembling, caught in the crossfire of their unending battle. What was this new force? And what did it want with her? The storm was just beginning. The ground stilled for a heartbeat, holding Claire in its grip, but that moment of clarity quickly shattered. As the brilliant light cascaded around her, illuminating the grotesque faces of the shadows, a silence fell, almost reverent. The air tingled, electric with a promise that thrummed against her skin. She squinted toward the source, the brilliance splitting the darkness at her back, yet forging ahead into the unknown. "Who are you?" Claire croaked, the question barely piercing the weighty silence that replaced the cacophony of screams. The brightness shifted, coalescing into a shape, a figure robed in glimmering white, stark against the shadows. The edges shimmered and writhed like smoke, alive and disturbing. Yet there was a calmness in the figure's presence that countered the chaos. In its eyes, Claire saw the depths of 1,000 scars, each reflecting a tale of torment and redemption. "Your heritage calls, Claire Halbert," it replied, voice resonating like chimes caught in the wind. "You are meant to confront this legacy, to decide for yourself how it shapes you." The shadows hissed, their twisted forms thrashing against the light's powerful swell. "You waste time with her. She will bring you ruin." They screeched, their pleas sharp with frantic desperation. "Let her choose," the figure commanded, its voice a storm of authority that echoed against the graveyard stones. "She must decide whether to cling to the past or break free from its chains." The shadows recoiled, coiling back, seeking refuge in the deepest corners of darkness. Claire felt herself trembling, not just from fear but from something else, clarity mixed with a fierce determination. What did she truly want? The echoes of her family's blood-soaked memories loomed before her, pulling her in two directions like a frayed rope. "Will you take on the curse or reject it?" The robed figure urged, softer now, almost inviting, yet laced with urgency. Claire's breath quickened. The locket still rested heavy in her palm. She thought of her grandmother, the pleading eyes desperately warning her to remember. "If I embrace this, what will become of me?" She stammered, the gravity of her lineage weighing heavily on her heart. "The curse can be a blessing, if wielded rightly," the figure replied, its gaze locking onto hers with fierce intensity. "You have the power to rewrite the narrative, your choices will ripple through the fabric of your family's fate." The shadows pulsed, tearing at the edges of her resolve. They hissed promises that erupted from the depths of despair, promises of revenge, of understanding, of becoming something more. "This is your legacy, Claire. Feed off the pain and rage, and rise." They howled, grinding against the mercy of the figure. As they clawed at her mind, another vision flashed before her, a timeline of sorrow and disruption, each bloodshed marking her heritage. Claire could feel it within her, the anger of her ancestors igniting a desperate need for resolution. Choose, the figure urged again, this time softer, but still echoing with authority. What if I reject you both? She tested, barely able to breathe through the tension that twisted in her gut. You risk everything, the figure replied, but the ties that bind you cannot be severed without dire consequence. Before her hovered the crushing weight of it all, the shadows, the curse, her family's pain, and a potential liberation teetering on the precipice of her choice. Claire's heart thundered in her chest. The shadows thrashed, swirling toward her like a rampaging whirlwind, desperate to claim what they believed was theirs. Just then, a flicker of doubt pierced through her fear. But what if I'm not strong enough? A chilling laugh spread through the air, dark and ominous. You will never know unless you try, the figure intoned, a hint of challenge sparking in its words. As the battle of voices surged within her, echoing with historical pain and newfound resolve, Claire took a deep breath. The locket felt like it was glowing in her palm, pulsing with possibility, but at that moment, the shadows lunged forward again, hungry for her despair. Choose now, or your fate will be sealed. They roared. What would she decide in that fleeting moment of truth? Would she step into the darkness, or would she harness the light that flickered within her? Time seemed to constrict, forcing her to confront the very essence of her being. The storm raged as she teetered on the brink of choosing between two worlds, and a terrible question hung in the air: would she transform into her family's legacy or shatter it forever? Claire could feel the storm swirling around her, shadows thrumming with energy, a malevolent force desperate to consume her. The weight of the locket pressed against her skin, a reminder of the legacy she had unearthed. As the voices crescendoed into a furious roar, the pressure mounted, demanding her response. Choose now, they shouted, the shadows lashing out in frustration. Embrace your darkness or fade into nothingness. Amid the chaos, Claire felt her pulse quicken. Memories flickered in her mind, fleeting moments with her family, laughter tangled with whispers of dread. She had always wanted to break free, to escape the Halbert name that felt like a heavy chain around her neck. But now, standing on the precipice, she realized these shadows weren't just a curse, they were part of her, a patchwork of pain and love, anger and sorrow. With trembling hands, she lifted the locket closer to her heart. The warmth of its metal clashed against the coldness of the shadowy figures, and she understood, to reclaim the truth, she must face it, all of it. I will confront you. Claire shouted into the void, her voice ringing clear amid the tempest. But I will do it on my terms. A moment of silence followed. Time seemed to stretch as the shadows recoiled, surprised by her conviction. Then, one by one, their anguished faces formed into an eerie semblance of respect. We await your decision, Claire, the robed figure murmured, its tone steadying the frantic air around them. The shadows hissed, but their intensity faltered, curiosity filling the space where rage had lived. Uncertainty skated across Claire's skin like a breath of fresh air. She was hungry for understanding, ready to bear witness to her family's hell and the intricacies of their legacies. As she loosened her grip on the locket, its surface shimmered under the moonlight, illuminating the buried secrets woven through her family tree. She closed her eyes and took a breath, willing herself to see. The visions flooded over her, twisting the past into a mosaic of voices yearning to be heard. Claire saw them, her ancestors' faces, etched with tales of suffering and regret. Each life told a story, weaving threads of frailty, bravery, and longing to unearth the truth that had haunted them. They were trapped in a cycle of pain, desperate for someone to acknowledge their existence. That's it. She gasped, realization washing over her like a divine wave. You're asking for acknowledgement, for understanding. I don't have to carry your burden, I will carry your truth. I'll honor you by telling your stories. The shadows erupted, their whispers morphing into screams. At the same time, the luminous figure shimmered closer. When you embrace their truths, you give them a voice, it said softly, as if cradling the very essence of hope. They may free you, too. The balance shifted, and Claire stepped forward, a newfound purpose igniting the air around her. I will not live in your shadow anymore. I choose to rewrite our story together, to transform this legacy from one of horror to one of understanding and healing. The shadows quieted, their thrashing subsiding as glimmers of recognition danced among them. She could feel the turbulence inside her melting into resolve. With renewed strength, Claire knelt down, digging into the earth, brushing away remnants of silence that plagued her family for so long. As she unearthed scraps of history, whispers turned into words of relief. Finally! They cried. You've chosen to listen. They swirled around her, the dark tendrils dissipating, their energies absorbed in a whirlwind of light that erupted from the core of the grave. The burst of colors illuminated the night, shadows unraveling, and in their wake, she found clarity. The ghosts of the Halberts, the faces she had feared, transformed before her. In that moment, Claire felt their gratitude course through her, filling the void with warmth, overshadowing the sorrow. Together, they danced between realms, entwining their stories into one singular cord. The pain that had once bound them now creating harmony. The moon shone bright above, a witness to Claire's metamorphosis. This was her legacy, now a shared truth beneath the surface. The whispers that used to haunt her morphed into murmurs of comfort and history, blending seamlessly with the promise of healing. The burden lightened, love replaced the lingering dread. As dawn crept over the horizon, golden fingers stretching across the sky, Claire stood up from the grave. The shadows had receded, no longer a threat, but intertwined with her spirit, a part of the ever-growing tapestry of her identity. With the first rays of sunlight pouring over Pine Ridge, Claire took a moment for herself, breathing in the fresh air of a new beginning. There was so much to tell, so many stories yearning to be shared, starting right here, right now. The darkness was no longer a burden, it was a pathway toward understanding, and with that, she kissed the locket softly, sealing her promise to embrace the truth of her bloodline. Stepping away from the gravesite, Claire looked toward the horizon, ready to reclaim her family's history and create a legacy of her own. This was Claire Halbert, no longer defined by the shadows, but a full spectrum of light and darkness. As she walked back toward the old house, a symphony of voices chimed in the air, forever entwined with hope, echoing her resolution. Pine Ridge was no longer a graveyard of lost dreams, it now held the possibility of rebirth. With a final glance back, Claire mused quietly, "You are heard." And for the first time, she smiled, a warmth blossoming in her chest. She was ready to tell the world the stories only they could share. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that await you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the fire of these tales burning. I want to hear you flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and wild theories about this ending. And for the love of everything, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything, only true fans understand the importance of lifting each other up through these actions.